Hi. Okay. Welcome everybody to this week's What the Heck. We have Speed Racer, Christian, and Bartok. Why can't I say Speed Racer? I just like blurb that. I'm not even drinking. I have no excuse.
I feel like it should
Speed
flow out
Racer.
everyone's tongue.
It is a cool name. Anyway, let's do super fast intros. Yeah. Why am I hearing so much noise? Where's that coming from? I don't know. Maybe it's not me. I don't know. Either way, welcome y'all. Let's do super fast intros. Who are you, and what is one great module that you got in your case? Starting with Speed Racer, and then we'll go clockwise. Yeah.
Name's Jason. I don't know how to introduce myself. I'm just a guy with a hobby that this is better than heroin addiction, right? And my I'd say my favorite module is my Deckard's voice. I just love that thing. It's so silky.
The Deckard's voice is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Bartok, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh
Very
boy,
clearly.
I got some weird static coming back into my own ears. There we go. Well, my name is Bartok. I make weird synthwave music, and favorite module in my case. This week, let's go with the Three Sisters, because
this week, right?
Yeah, because I always say how much I hate the Three Sisters module. I can never figure it out or get what I want from it. But I was talking to Iggs Boson, and he's like, "You always complain about it, but you use it so much." So,
that must be Iggs, a sign.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Three Sisters because it does have 4 inputs, 4 outputs. You can put in. You could put a filter on either all highs, mids, or lows, and then have outputs for all of those. So it does really have a lot of functionality. I'm just always wrestling with it.
I love that you listed that. It is a great module. That is a good assessment. All right, Christian.
Yeah, I also don't know what to say about me. I'm also just a guy with a hobby, I guess. Trying to make some tunes on the side whenever I find time. Favorite module? I don't know. I will also go with some week's favorite, I guess. And this week, I will just say the IO47 by Instru, which is a lovely filter. And
lovely filter.
I was going to say Three Sisters as well, but that would be boring. So no. IO it is. It's really a silky filter, super smooth. Lots of options.
That's
lots
pretty
of
cool.
Options.
That's pretty cool. I'll have to look further into. Maybe you know what? I'm not gonna look into Three Sisters anymore because I know if I look into it, I'll be like, I gotta get it, and I have a feeling this one's not like the easiest module to get right now.
It is as Bartok said, it is really difficult. Like it never does what you want it to do. but if you just patch it without expectations, it usually does something good. That's how I would say it works.
Yeah.
Like,
all right.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing. You just need to lower the bar.
Yeah.
All right, my turn. I'm Hex 7. I make bad modular music and spend more time on Modular Grid than working, which is bad. But my favorite, but a great module. Like, speaking of modules where you need to lower your expectations and they don't really ever do what you want, but they eventually get there. I have a new mixer called the Mix 'em Up by Blue Lantern, which is an older mixer they made. but I love it because it's perfect for drum submixing for me because it has 8 inputs, 7 of
And they're
which
super compact, right?
it is super compact. And because with the drum mix, I'm not really messing with most of the accents, like the hats or any sort of noise-ish module. Like I'm not really messing with the levels too much on those. Typically the levels I'm messing with are the kick and the snare, and that's it. So like if I have those right at the top, no need to think about it. And each of the inputs, or 7 of the inputs, have I think like 6 dB of gain, or just a little bit more gain than the input, which is just enough to like give you a little bit of headroom there. So that has definitely like been my life-saving module of the week. So I'm very much happy about that one.
Nice.
Yeah, let's get into it. We've got like kind of a lot of stuff to talk about, but I know what I want to talk about, which is Jason, your new monster case is well named, but you just got this massive thing
Yesterday. Yeah.
yesterday, right? Like this,
Yeah.
and it's like populated, right? Like, and looks awesome. Tell me about this case. Why did
So
you?
before he starts into that, can you blow his video up? We can.
Oh yeah. Well, let's do one of let's do this view maybe, and then switch people. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So, well, I feel like I should talk about myself because I was a keyboard player when I was in my 20s. Gigged around Boston a little bit and lived that rock and roll dream, such as it exists, right? And then went on to be a working stiff, which is like the classic story of most people who have been a musician at some point in their life, right? And sometime, maybe about 2 years ago, somebody flew a picture of this thing by my window, which was it's the Pluto, and got on the eternal waiting list for this thing. And because it was an eternal waiting list, the next thing that happened was I'm like, well, damn, what am I doing? And that same friend was like, oh, you should try maybe a Zero Coast, right? And I'm like, oh, actually, that looks like it'd be a lot of fun. Let me get one of those. Not available anywhere, right? Not available anywhere. So I'm like, well, crap. What am I gonna do? Because I really had some keyboard dreams, not keyboard dreams, but synthesizer dreams, right? So I'm like, well, maybe I'll try Modular. This looks like it could be fun. I could build my own synthesizer, right? And that's where this came from, right? Like, so it's been sometimes one piece at a time, sometimes a lot of pieces at a time, sometimes 2 giant cases at a time. I don't know if it's a dream. I feel like a year or 2 from now, I'm going to be running out of a case this size. It's just going to be 4 modules. But until then, I like having all the toys. There is nothing more liberating than having your keyboard broken apart. I just can't say enough for it. It took me a minute because I'm so used to fixed routing that you get in XYZ keyboard, but as soon as that's in pieces, you're talking about Three Sisters earlier, just being able to choose a filter, right? And not the one, but the other one. That's what a great option, right? And that's the illness that got a hold of me. is what I can have 10 filters in here?
Yeah,
Sweet.
so you're one of the folks that like.
I'm a filter junkie.
Also one of these folks that, but like, got a small thing, and then like, what seems like 10 minutes later, you got a monster case, right?
Had way too much fun with it, yeah. And like
well, no, he was a guy that went to buy a O-Coast. We're like, you're out of stock? All right, 21 you will do then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it didn't happen quite like that, but I mean, in retrospect, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm
I would
still
like
getting
an
used to
every.
it. Like getting towered over by this thing, it's a little strange.
Yeah, so we had a question in the chat, which I wanted to ask you too, is like, how is it not like falling on you right now?
So, so in the monster case line, Doper puts hardware in the back of the case for nuts and bolts, right? So there's a steel plate there, and then the other corner, and then there's also steel plates between the base and the first deck, right?
And they're just bolted on. It's not like
They're bolted straight
butterfly
to the
connectors.
back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
How
how
wide is
many?
that case?
Yeah.
168.
Wow.
What's the power supply? Does it have the dope for power supplies in there?
Yeah, it does. And from what I'm told, although I haven't run into this issue yet, so it's one power supply in the 2Us and it's one power supply in the 3Us, right? So one of these rows is essentially over budget,
Okay.
but not quite, right? Most people say they don't run into a problem. And the 4s, I think, have two power supplies in them.
Yeah, I
But
think if you went really heavy on like some of the more power intensive digital modules or something, you could run
it
into
might,
issues.
yeah, it might chow some.
I'm definitely like so fed up with power supplies. I go with overkill route. That's like my instinct.
I don't think you can go wrong that way. It's better than the other thing.
Yeah.
Um,
What I find interesting though is what you said. Like in 1 or 2 years, you're probably going to end up with a small case.
mhm.
And I think that's a valid, like really valid point. It's kind of you will. What's interesting is like you have all this stuff to play with, but then at some point you're going to be like, what's the minimum that I can do to like have fun and maybe go perform somewhere? And yeah, you're going to end up with a small case that's going to be really well thought out.
Yeah, and I'll say one of my long-running fascinations is with instruments, right? So that's why I'm in love with the Pluto. It's why I'm in love with the Zero Coast, right? Is that they're standalone instruments, and the design of them was well thought out so that they're very quickly playable. Those kinds of features are, it's what makes a trumpet, right? and so this is not so much an instrument as instrument exploration, right? And what I think that small case will be is the instrument, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that's
quite
what it'll
interesting
distill down to.
what you can do with small cases. Like I have a 40 HP case here that I wanted to use for control stuff. I haven't really made it happen yet, so it's just floating around. And last weekend I gave a demo of the Deluge to some people. I wanted to add some Eurorack just for the CV and gate features it has. So the Eurorack wasn't important. It was just I wanted to show it works. So I didn't want to have it like a huge system in the camera frame. So I tried to make a little instrument in that 40 HP case, and it works. Like it's pretty amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
I agree. Enthusiastic Electrons also agrees and is a good example of somebody who makes like lots of these little cases for like a performance. I'll like put together a little case for performance. Although my favorite case that he does every once in a while is like it's like a 2x4 with like some rails like hot glued to it or something, and like the power supply. There's no back to it. Like I love that one.
Yeah.
It's nicer than that, but it just has that vibe of like I just put some rails on some 2x4s and that was it. It's perfect. But he makes really cool performances just off of these little cases.
Right. Yeah, no, one of my favorite internet follows is Ihor. And he always operates out of small boxes.
I think the opposite of that, like Richard Devine has like every module and I don't know, just a sea of cables. And I have to question how many of those cables actually get unplugged because there's just so much going on all the
There does
time.
seem like a semi-permanence to some of that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus a small case, like, it's trivial to unplug and replug everything in every time. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually see behind me, despite having multiple of those, the biggest one I have is 6U. So I only have 6U cases basically that are already a bit too big for one instrument. Like it would be a very expressive instrument, I guess, if you split it
Yeah.
with just one voice. But a two-voice instrument or an instrument and a sample mangler or something that works great in those cases. So I try to make every of those cases usable standalone, basically.
that makes a lot of sense.
I'm not nearly that clever.
I did that with a
I'm
few
not
of my
sure if
cases.
that's clever. Like it is also a mental barrier because like patching across cases, you have like 4 filters in the one case, 4 filters in the other case, and then
So
deciding I want to
strange
use. Yeah,
how that
it's like
works. It's
I have
so
4 filters
strange.
right here. Why not use those?
No, to an extent, that's a psychology bit to why I bought this, right? Is that going cross cases was making me a little crazy, right?
But if they're all in one giant case, it's fine.
Well, see, I mean, even though it's
You-
a small example, right? Like I use mix-ups to chain behind the back, right? So I get audio chaining up the middle without cables, right? And that's worth it. Rack plumbers in there too. You have those, right? Heck,
What do I have?
the rack plumbers.
Yeah, I just pulled them out.
Well, they come and go.
Well, yeah, I pull them out and put them in as needed because they're really trivial to put in. They don't need any power.
Right.
But yeah, the rack plumbers are fantastic, especially for CV.
Everybody has one.
They're cheap. I mean, it's like
Yeah, exactly.
it
Why
doesn't
would you
even matter
not?
which brand. It's like $80 to $90, maybe less if you get used for a pair, right?
For a pair, yeah.
Right. And I don't know. Has anybody run into like noise issues with them? You hear people say, "Oh, there's noise issues." I haven't hit one yet.
I'm sure there is noise issues. Like if you crank the gain on your mixer and you have the volume way up so that you can hear the ground hum. Like this gets into like pedal board design territory where people are like having, audio signals and power signals. Like they make sure
at 45s and all that. Yeah.
And I imagine there's some of that going on. And also it could depend on the Cat 5 cable you're using, or Cat 6. Like some of those are not shielded very well. In fact, the one it came with is okay. I went with like a fancy Cat 8 because it was yellow, that was shielded, and that hasn't had any noise issues. I will say they've all had a little bit of crosstalk, which isn't a problem. If you're doing all audio or all CV, it's not a problem at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just separate them out. Like the worst I had is using audio and like a clock in a twisted pair. But I mean, usually just don't use channels right beside each other for those two.
Yep.
Separate it out, and then it's fine.
Yep. I'm just reading through chat real quick, but yeah, the rack plumbers are like game changing for big cases. Or in my case, I was going from like it was a setup time issue where I needed to connect that case to this case quickly with audio or CV, and so like one cable to connect a bunch of patch points is much faster. So that was the main reason I went to it.
That too. Yeah, the pro audio world lives on snakes.
I'm glad it's not a snake though, because like the snakes, for those not familiar, are like a thick cable that's actually like 6 to 10 cables or something, all with color coded heads. So you have to like, make sure the color codes go into both places just right. Or sometimes there's like the I forget what connector it is, like computer monitor connector or something used on the DP5. Yeah, they have those connectors. on one
Stage
side
boxes.
sometimes too. Yeah.
That's like nice.
All right, so we got a question from Egon.
Yeah.
It's like, Speed Racer with such a big case, how important or what techniques do you use for module arrangement?
Ooh, that's a good question. Technique. So we were talking about this before we jumped into the show about how you pilot modular grid so much and then you stack this stuff in and it's a kind of different story. And I'm in that period where I'm like, is this where I want that thing? Or I was complaining some people earlier this morning, there's a chunk of Leibniz in the highest place and it all has to go in as one piece. And that was stupid. If I ever want to rewire it, it's it's already come out once. It sucks, right? So no plan survives contact with the enemy, as they say.
I will just want to drop in on that point. Like having a lot of vertical cases, it is really hard to, even if they're just straight up and down, it's really hard to get just a regular single panel thing in. And get the screws in and everything because gravity is a thing. I can only imagine like if you have something like the Metron or any module that the Droid series where they're all connected on the back, like getting something like that in like above you at an angle is going to be kind of nightmarish.
No, it's an immediate, I am regretting this decision, but I've stuck with it. I'm going to be like, grit my teeth for a little bit. I don't know. I'm still working on Leibniz, so that's its own discussion, right? So the way it's wired, maybe I'll keep it, maybe I won't. Hopefully, who knows? But as far as
right
technique,
now, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, you were asking.
I was just going to say, so like right now, I know you've changed it up a couple times, but what do you have? Do you have
so what I do, and this is kind of something I've done no matter what, right? Is that motion from sort of controlled to I'll call an LFO random, just like whatever can wander on its own is somewhere in here. Sequencers are down here, so motion up into an audio source into audio filters, like so. That's the idea. You realize once you set it up, like my morphogene's out for service, but when it comes back, I'm going to wish I hadn't put it here already because the audio comes out up here in the corner and it's a long way from that, right? So, and that's what I was saying before. You have these dreams, but as soon as you start adding wires to it, then the experience is different, right? And so this is it's not even 24 hours old, right? I barely started to plug wires into this. I'm sure I'm going to find other things that I regret.
I mean, any new case, like you're going to have to go through like months of refinement, maybe years. Yeah. I don't know. So that's normal.
And another thing I did, I don't know if anyone else has ever hit up Mother Deskin for this, but she'll rearrange your case for you, right? You're just like, oh, this is what I got. She'll be like, oh, here you go, right? She's the one who came up with this split, the split black silver with audio up the center, and because it was a new idea, I just went with it, right? Like sometimes you don't know what's good till you try it, right? So it works off of my own personal basic theme, that one of like control into motion and sources into filtration and audio, right? But the layout is partially hers, I would say. And we'll see if it works. Awesome. Right?
Yeah. I'm curious to see, like, this is like the before photo, like when you first
it absolutely is. This is the beginning of the journey, right?
Yeah. All right.
Or maybe somewhere in the middle, not actually the beginning, but this is the second beginning. Chapter 2.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Otherwise, I want to talk about matrix mixers.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Christian, you're up. You wrote matrix mixer, and like I've always been curious. So tell me what's going on.
I was unfortunately not very precise in writing that down. So everyone is thinking about Eurorack matrix mixes like the 4MS VCA matrix, I guess. But what I actually got is the standalone Erica Sims matrix.
That is what I was picturing, by the way.
Yes, and it's lovely.
Can you show that up again?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
let's see
sure.
it some more. More glory pictures.
Here we go. So it's 16 by 16. 16 by 16 channels, 16 in, 16 out. Wait, like this.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
you can, there's not much control. Like you can enable or disable the connection, and you have two ways of attenuating. You can have 66 or 33% attenuation.
Oh, so it's like two levels. Like you can drop
three
it by
levels
a
actually.
third
Full. Yeah,
0 dB or the other two cuts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that is nice enough to like get Eurorack levels down for desktop gear. So I can plug back and forth between Eurorack and like a pedal, an effects pedal or something. And
Neat.
yeah, it's super fun. It can be MIDI controlled, so you can switch presets. You can store presets and then switch between
the
setup. Yeah. So that's fun. And obviously, I mean, MIDI, so you can use it with a sequencer. And then
I was gonna say, I just pictured sequencing the presets, and you could get like
that's
if
the
you
idea.
used it just with modular, you could have a different sound per step of a lot of things, like very wild stuff.
So that's the idea, and with stuff like the Three Sisters and such, you can have fun with that setup. So that's the direction I'm heading for.
That's
I've been thinking a lot about the the Herbs and Stones Pathways as a fun box.
Yeah, that looks super cool. I saw it after I bought this one, and it looks fun too. Yeah.
So that is one of those devices that I really am very curious to see folks do cool things with. Because I also somewhat want it. I saw it was listed on their B stock sale, or one of them was listed on B stock, and it was very hard to resist that.
So I haven't used it that much yet, but what I used it for and what it's nice for is something like the Deluge can record and also loop audio, but it only has two inputs, two outputs. So I can route back and forth, right? So sequence something, loop the audio, and then get something else running and get it in and loop it again.
That's cool.
And throw some effects in between and stuff like that. That's the idea. I might get an SP44 as well, and then it's two loopers with lots of effects, and that could be interesting.
That'd be rad. I don't see a lot of loopers in Eurorack performances. Like occasionally, I mean, I don't see a lot of like the traditional like clock sync loopers. Like obviously lots of people are like running near infinite loops on delays and things like that. But that sounds like a lot of fun. I can't even wrap my head. Okay, so on EMS not too long ago, and I'm pretty sure some of the other Discord have all had this same chat about pin matrices versus like a digital matrix, or even just matrices in general. But more recently, I saw one talking about like the differences between pin and digital, and some folks weren't like stoked about the digital. But I gotta say, like the Micro Freak over there has a digital matrix on there, and it is like pretty awesome to use. Like pins are really cool, and the aesthetic appeals to me a ton. But then I think about Battleship, and like there's some fiddliness to it. I drop things a lot with my kludgy fingers, so I really like that with the digital ones. I can't like drop a metal pin into my rack or something. Like,
Yeah, no,
you know,
they're a little they have a bespoke aspect to them that's always going to be, you know, difficult, I would say. You know, if you were ballsy enough to take your Cynthia out on a live tour, you wouldn't be touching the pins, right? They would just be where they
yeah.
are, and you'd be adjusting the dials, but you wouldn't
I
be
mean,
touching
you
the
probably
pins.
would. Like, I think the pins themselves aren't like the most expensive because it is pretty much what it says. It's more like the
Oh, but it's a contact-based system, right? Like the
right.
more they have an insertion life, right?
Well, right. And
So
I was gonna say with Forstein, like the it's more of like the what you put the pins into is the tricky bit. That's like a sort of custom manufactured thing versus like a TRS jack, you know?
Yeah, like
right.
a clamp. Yeah, it's true. Also, this is I find this amazingly fun. Like in the beginning, it's super annoying to have these two dials. Like one is vertical and one is horizontal.
Yep.
So it's
It's
fun to
it's
use.
etch
Like
a
It's just etch
sketch.
a sketch, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's just very enjoyable to have this click 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 hit
Tell me
because
they've
Yeah,
got an etch a
they
sketch
make a
mode,
synth
right?
box.
They should have made
They
it
make
where
a
you
synth
can
box for
shake
that,
it
right?
and it clears everything.
yeah, that would be nice. That would be
That
nice.
would be useful. They have a synth box that has that matrix in it too. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, the Syntrax.
Centrix, yeah.
Yeah,
That
And the
sounds right.
Centrix 2, I believe, also
yeah.
has it.
A little cheaper, from what I understand. You know, a little less expensive.
I hope
Always
so. Yeah.
intriguing.
It's a beautiful synthesizer, I will say.
Yeah.
I this is something that I always wrestle with. Is there are just some really beautifully designed, not just aesthetically, but just like well put together and like well organized and well designed synthesizers that pop up like the Centrix, like my some of my favorites are like the Centrix, like the Grandmother, like MS-10, like all of these really cool synthesizers pop up.
No teenage engineering choir?
I want to loop back to that. let's put a digital pin in that. Uh, that was dumb. I apologize to all of
I
the
like it. It
viewers
was
on
good.
behalf of
I
that
thought it was
stupid
good.
callback. Anyway, they pop up and I get really excited about them. One I was really excited about earlier, like the last couple months, was the Moog Siren Analog Messenger of Joy, because it's essentially a Moog Taurus with a bigger octave range, and it's just a beautiful design. It's got a cool name. It sounds really good. And then the more I dig into it, like in terms of like, oh, do I want to spend money on this? And I think about my setup. I'm like, well, what do I have that sounds the same as that? Like, you know what? The same is never going to happen because I don't have like the Moog filters and Moog Signal Pass. But what do I have that sounds like good enough for me if I'm not comparing them side by side? And that's been like deterring me from buying these synths. Like, I just, I want them, but do you get I don't know, do you wrestle with that kind of stuff? Like there's so many cool things that pop up every year that I would
Yeah,
love to have for just like a week.
it's super tricky, especially because they look so neat, right? Like a
Yeah.
Syntrix, it just
Yeah.
looks good. Or an
Yeah.
MS-20 or whatever. Like all
Yeah.
of them, if they are well designed, they just look good. And obviously, also if they're well designed, they sound just good.
Yeah.
You can make your rack sound like that, but you need to put in the work.
Right.
So I don't know. The Matrix Mixer opened up my mind for that kind of workflow, and like maybe I want to move some of the stuff I have in rack to standalone boxes. But then on the other hand, you lose the flexibility, of course. So it would have to be a sound that I really love, right?
Yeah.
So it would have to be something where I'm like, yeah, I would use this all the time because the sounds are just those sounds I like anyway. So that could work, I guess.
Yeah.
My thought on that is, who was it? I think Stephen Wright, the comedian, said, if you had everything, where would you put it? Right? Like and that's my disconnect with keyboards. I love them. It's my origin, but I've got nowhere to put them, right? And also, you know, I'm old enough now that I know my own habits. That if I have, you know, let's just call this the main setup, right? So I have the main setup, but in another room is where my keyboards are. Those aren't going to get touched as much, right? And that's me, right? So it just doesn't make sense to try to populate that collection. You know, I think if a music easel dropped in my lap, I might find a spot for it, you know, but, you know, yeah,
like Bartok said, like,
yeah, exactly like that. Exactly like that. Right. But that's, you know, there's no music easel dropping in my lap. So yeah, you know, it's just fun to enjoy them from a distance. You know, I'm fortunate enough to live within a short distance from Detroit Modular, right? So a lot of these things I can just go play with them if I need a fix, you know, which is nice, right? Like I would really like a Lyra 8. I would love a Lyra 8. I don't need a Lyra 8. I can get my Lyra 8 fixed down there. It's pretty good.
It's actually Lyra 8, for example. I thought about it for a long time because whenever you hear one, it sounds just special.
Oh, it's a wonder machine.
Yeah.
They're just so much fun.
But I found a great iPad app, and especially for this kind of touch workflow that also the Lyra 8 has, it kind of works. Like it totally fixed my itch for that one. It
Fair
just
enough.
normally I don't do stuff with iPad, and I hate most of the music apps because I'm not a touch panel person, touch screen person. But the Lyra 8 thing just did the thing. Like it just did what I expected it to do.
Nice.
But also, like keyboards, I totally agree. It's a problem. I'm super not tempted by any keyboard synth because I have the digital piano there in the back, and I just love those keys. Like I would not play any other keys if I have this.
Playability is like playability is its own topic, right? Like this came up in a shared Discord, right, where I was like, oh no, I have to touch the wheels. How do those wheels feel? Right, that's super important to me. Right? It can't just be any keyboard, right? So that's its own problem.
I maybe disagree. I mean, I'm not like a great keyboard player. I'm sure Christian is like up here and I'm like off the screen down here somewhere. But like when I consider keyboards, there's the ones that I really like. I play them with different purposes in mind. If I'm playing like melodies and slower things or like whatever, like a weighted keyboard is just really satisfying. There's no getting around that. Like it's really satisfying. But when I'm playing like stupid synth things, like the crappy zero action like synth like plastic keys are like my favorite because they're ultra snappy.
Oh no, there's a huge like I said, it's its own topic,
but not satisfying
like B3s,
at all.
like Hammond B3s also have their own feel, right?
Yeah.
But you can't like the plastic feel of keyboards gives you that same gliss that you can get on a Hammond, right? You can't get that quite the same on weighted keys, right? You can, but it's just not. Yeah, but once again, if you're addicted to a particular way of playing that way, then there's a feel that certain keyboards have and certain keyboards don't, right? And like I mentioned earlier that I came from rock keyboards, so leads are a thing, and that's why wheels are important to me, right? Like if you're going to wah and bend, you want that stuff to be responsive in a very specific way, the way a guitarist would care about action on their guitar, right? It's exactly the same thing.
I will say there's no reason to have like, well, there's not, in my opinion, there's not great reasons to have like two full 88 key weighted keyboards or like two synth keyboards or like, two of the micro freak keyboards. Like maybe if you're an organ player, I don't know.
I guess for loop performance, kind of thing, where you want to
Yeah.
switch and do the 2-keyboard kind of thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rick Wakeman obviously has a need, right?
Yeah.
And none of us are him, right? But I mean, just as long as we're talking about that kind of thing, right? Like Jordan Rudess, on the other hand, can go out with one keyboard and slay it, right? Because he's much more willing to, his audience gives him that room, right? Rick doesn't feel like he has that room. Part of his thing is the cape, right? The cape and the, it's a performance. You're throwing shapes, right? That's his shape.
I mean, that's where synth stacks on stage come from, right? It's a performance thing, not necessarily we need it thing, but hey, it looks good.
Yeah, it looks good. It's what the audience wants, right? You're selling a thing, And certainly, I mean, watch old Keith. Keith just, I'm sure he just died after every show, just slept for a day.
Oh my gosh.
Because he's just so much energy. So much energy.
I mean, even online, I think the visuals are really an important aspect of it. Like the audio is good too, but I think with our particular niche of modular, the visuals are probably like 70% more. Like it's like 70% important visuals and like 30%
you don't bob your
audio.
head to your own music. That's not a good sign, right?
Well,
like,
yeah, but
if you're not digging it,
it's just like
but
the
it carries
visuals
through.
get people
It
to
all
stop.
carries through, right? Like if you're tapping your foot, your audience will tap their foot. It's just the way
hold
works.
on though. But the visuals are important though, because like at DEF CON, like Bartok was there. Like a lot of people stopped because I had like Frankenstein synthesizer set up, not because my music was.
It wasn't playing.
It was objectively worse than the people that were playing before or after me because they were doing DJ sets, which had really well mixed things.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet that's not that.
No, not true at all.
From like just a listening standpoint, if you were just listening,
people were stopping. People were stopping before you were even playing. So as to the visual aspect, like there's something that just grabbed people on, like what is this? Versus when you saw the DJs that were getting set up, everybody kept walking because they knew what to expect.
Right. So I think visuals are really important, and like when you're doing performance, it's why like people get so much shit for hitting play buttons, whether it's on your like tracker or like a DJ set, right? Like you're not really playing anything. Like that kind of mentality is like the thought. Whereas if somebody takes like 2 seconds to pull the drums out so that they have an Akai MPC and they just do like like a really basic drum beat, all of a sudden people are like, yeah, he's playing those drums on that little machine. Like it's visual.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, I didn't mean to go on a tangent.
No, it wasn't
that's
a tangent at all.
It actually could lead to the next topic because you mentioned trackers, And, I think some of you have got some.
Weren't we going to talk about trackers? I forgot all about that. Yeah,
we can or we can't.
They exist.
So the mate. What about the mate? Mate and visuals. The mate needs like a mate boat or something, like something that brings the visuals to it. I guess.
Yeah. So the M8 is pretty compact. It's a tiny little baby machine that is made by a magician who's made like this. This is, I think, the first machine I've used in a very long time that feels like the equivalent of a modern like luthier making a machine. Like it's extremely well designed, like every part of it. I don't understand how it does what it does, being powered by like what, a Teensy or something like that.
It's a Teensy 4.1, yeah. It's like, crazy to hear the sounds come out of the Teensy. It really is. You're
like it makes no sense. So this machine is just a brilliant thing. But we were talking earlier a bit about like NerdSec versus the M8.
Oh yeah.
And just to bring it back to modular a little bit, the NerdSec is one of those sequencers that I've very much been attracted to, especially since like playing with the M8 and some like Game Boy trackers and things like that. You use both, don't you, Speed Racer? Is the
Uses a loose term, right? Like I only just discovered trackers when you posted that link to the headless 3 or 4 months ago. I hadn't seen a tracker before that, right?
Okay.
But this is interesting. This is a full circle aspect of this discussion, right? Like when I first got into modular, right? Like I was kind of obsessed with hooking it up to Logic, and once I immediately realized, I'm like, oh shit, I'm in the exact same like blocking point that I was when I was in my 20s trying to write music with a stack of keyboard equipment, MIDI sequencers, MIDI, my Matu 8, all the stuff. And, you still had to write the music, right? And suddenly I was at that point again. I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? I don't want to, I didn't actually want to end up here, right? And at that exact same moment, I either saw like a Turing machine video or somebody did something that was generative. I'm like, oh, wait, this is what people are actually doing in these racks. And then I, hard turned towards that, right? And just abandon Logic because I didn't want to write music. What was much more fun was to have a musical bus that had a really loose steering wheel, right? And you could just let it go, right? And then jump in and drive it once in a while and then let it go, and not struggle.
All right, we got to get you and Schmooster on at some point to talk
musical
musical
really?
bus. Yeah.
Right. So trackers came in at some point, and suddenly I was just like, oh Jesus, it just made a bunch of sense on how to, if I wanted to create music, I would do it this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
I had a very different approach to that. Like I saw trackers and went, oh, cool. You can make music with spreadsheets. No thanks. But I got more curious and tried it out. And it was just, it's like, do I want a NerdSec in my case for how I play music? No.
But you have that Hapax, right? Like,
right. And I'll go back to that.
Drive, you've got whatever you want to call it, the mothership, the way to center the bus. Right?
Yeah, but the NerdSec, the way I use the M8 tracker is pretty isolated. Like it is, I don't like using it with other gear. It is sort of the nutshell because it's something I can zoom around and I can write and compose with. I can compose an entire track, and there's some random stuff you can do, and there's lots of capabilities, and there's sound design. It's all in a little box. So like it's calling it a groove box, I feel, is like underselling it, but like that's typically how I use it, and I'll like add samples to it and I love it. But with one thing that I've struggled with trackers is something that the Pyramid and the Hapax happen to do well, which is like rapid scene switching. So like wildly changing the melodies that are playing on like a push of a button. And you can do that with the M8. It's just like kind of janky and not quite as quick for me to do. So like I have to use two hands to navigate and use it, or sometimes one hand. But like with a Hapax, I can like reach over and tap a button, right? And at the same time have like a filter going. So I look cool doing something really dumb, but makes me sound like that kind of stuff. So that's the main reason I haven't gone toward the NerdSec, even though I'm really attracted to it. Like it has so many cool expanders, and I would argue that one is similar to the M8, and where the creator is so extremely passionate about it and making it as good as it possibly can be.
He's really something to work with. That part is pretty amazing.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
Can we explain, like on 5, what a tracker is?
Oh yeah. So a lot of sequencers. There's
music is video games.
no, there is one that anyway. most sequencers have like a playhead that's moving across a thing, and sometimes it's a circle, sometimes it's a line. And a tracker, the main difference is it's like sort of going straight down a big list of notes. And there's some idiosyncrasies that make up a tracker. Like typically they have a certain amount of lanes, and a lane doesn't necessarily correspond to an instrument. So like on a normal sequencer, like on all 8 of those notes that you have or whatever, they're all sequencing the same instrument unless you're doing weird splitting things, right?
Right. Okay.
We're like sequencing chords and then using another sequencer to sequence the gates for all of those things. Like for the most part, is sequencing one instrument. On the tracker, you can actually control every single step to be a different instrument or a completely different set of parameters for that instrument. Like, meaning you can get really crazy dubstep, you could do ambient stuff. There's lots of programmatic controls, typically like jumping to different steps. So if I hit this step, jump here on the list, and you get more sort of randomy stuff too. Like it's building lots of instruments one step at a time via a spreadsheet. That's
it's probably also important to
you're
mention
setting your
the
notes.
history of them though. They came from the Game Boy, right? It was originally a thing that was written for the Game Boy, right?
No.
Format,
oh, you mean the mate? Yeah, the mate. Yeah.
Yeah, like the format of this comes from that style of, drilling in on the little machine.
But the history is super interesting because trackers came about to make video game music. So that's the interesting part. In times where graphical user interfaces were not a thing.
Yeah.
So it was the idea to envision a graphical user interface for making music on simple devices like the C64s of the time and the Atari STs and whatnot. With super limited capabilities.
That's why the big love for chiptune, I think, within that community, right? Like,
and they typically have a sound because they're using the device's built-in sound card. Or not card is the wrong word. IC is typically the chip. Yeah.
There is actually a new tracker, an open source tracker project for desktop computers that emulates old chips. So there you can experience how that works, because then it actually makes the channels be the parts of the chip. Like if you simulate a whatever C64 chip that has 2 square waves and a noise channel or whatever, so you have three tracks, and that's your tracks, and you go and sequence two square waves and a noise in some way.
That's kind of fun. Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, I mean that's Go.
Yeah, and just looping way back to the beginning of the discussion where we were talking about visuals and something like this, the community and the creator, I think, have made multiple essentially visualizers that are web-based, so they work in your browser. So you connect your M8 to your computer with a USB cable, and then when you're playing, it's visualized on a computer, which is extremely handy if you're using something like OBS or whatever. You can just grab that frame, throw it over your stream or whatever, and you've got
Today I learned.
It tells you when your buttons are it shows when the buttons are pressed, so it can do that. It'll show the visualizer here, of each step going by. It's a really cool way to do it. And I'm not entirely sure, but he built an arcade system that has two M8s basically next to each other for trade shows and stuff. And I think it's using a set of those or something like that to make that happen. Pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's neat.
Well, what is fun is that like everyone is about trackers are so different, but in the end, a lot of things come together again. If you look at Electron boxes where you can parameter lock the sample for the Digitech, for example, that is basically like a tracker track, because you can you can change the sample per step. It's pretty much that. While on the nerd side, sorry, just on the nerd side, it doesn't do that, because obviously the NerdSec is primarily Eurorack sequences, so at least the CV gate channels are bound to the CV gate output, so you don't change the instrument because there's nothing to change. It's a CV gate and a mod output. You can change the mod values like a whatever value you want. It's just a CV.
To MIDI or to one of the
Yeah.
aux outs or something. You have a lot of choices there.
Yeah, that works obviously. But the idea of changing instruments is not as strong
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
You can do that with the sample channels, but not with the CV channels. So that's quite interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, no, user-friendly sounds is one of my favorite nerd seek beaters. Like, you want to see someone really stretching it. He's the guy doing it.
I forgot what I was going to say. I just wanted to point out the main difference that I don't think I really clarified earlier. That to me, this is like a composition machine. So I'm composing to an extent in a way that's very programmatic versus playing in a melody. And it can record in MIDI, but I never do that. Or some, like, versus like when I'm, using the hot box, or before that, other things where I had a keyboard, like I'm oftentimes like playing in melodies to like get a feel for things on a keyboard, or a grid layout or something, where on this, like, you can't really do that without an external thing plugged in. I guess that's one, I don't know, issue that I run into.
I bought it for travel. Was the primary reason I bought the Mate.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
just it's there's a lot about it that would be nice to have on the road.
Can confirm it's the only thing I bring with me at this point when I'm traveling.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was really cool. I got to, like, when I was over at the Museum of Everything Else, I was like blasting M8 tunes through the Leslie speakers of the Game Boy
really?
machine.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to think. There's some other stuff I wanted to talk about too. Bartok, you have any topics you want to bring up? You're starting on a new set of patch cables, I hear.
I am. I got an order for someone who's very demanding. Yeah, very specific color, very exact on lengths. I had to go buy a centimeter ruler just for this person.
Wow.
I did offer to convert. I mean, that person offered to convert to inches if you wanted. I'm very excited about that. But what else?
Yeah, no, and I just actually Schmooster also puts his orders in centimeters, so I'm just teasing you. But no, let's see. In an hour, I'm supposed to be jumping on another stream with New York Modular to work on this guy.
Ooh, is that a wand?
That is
a pressure sensor.
The Soma thing? Oh no, okay. Interesting.
It's a ribbon controller by Subjectivize.
Yeah.
So it's one that they just came out with. So we're doing a build.
The world needs more expressive controls.
Yeah, a build stream. This one has some more features than like some other ribbon controllers that I've seen. They designed it to be played. You can either like if you hold like a guitar where you have your low notes and then up to your high notes, or you can reverse it and
reverse it just to be like Dvorak or something for guitarists. Right. Like you can't.
Or maybe you're a left-handed. Maybe you're a left-handed player. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of do that. That's my new thing. That's why this is empty, because I cleared out the space. My rack's gone, so I can build that.
Do some building. That's awesome. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Can we zoom in on the wood back?
On the back, I think it's just a yardstick.
Well, I'll zoom in. Just give me.
Is it really just a yardstick?
I think so. Yeah. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What kind of voltage does it need?
Well, it plugs into the corresponding Eurorack module. So I don't.
Oh,
Obviously, it's not put together. So I mean, it plugs in. This is going to be the module. Let's do that.
so they're not making the dope for a mistake and putting a USB plug on it.
What's the connector for it? Like, how does it connect?
So
it does look like it could be a USB connector with the thread.
Yeah, I did
It's
kind of, but
it's actually not. So
It's
it
probably a screen,
uses
4-pin plug,
nope.
Ethernet.
Ethernet cable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's
Okay. Cool.
which
It's not the worst connector.
I have my Ethernet cable handy, ready to go.
Ooh.
There you go. Yeah.
Is that one you put together? Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, of course it is.
All right, so Bartok, I'm gonna zoom out, but Bartok showed up when we hung out. No, this was after we hung out, but he brought the Soma Pulsar to DEF CON, and it comes with like
alligator
clips,
right?
Yeah. And if you've used any, it doesn't matter what brand, they're all like kind of crappy and flimsy. So Bartok made like these like ultra
battery clamps.
They're like they're awesome. Here, let's just keep. You know what? I don't know why I keep zooming out.
Deserves. Actually, I'm glad you did that, because that's kind of the big disappointment of that instrument are the cables.
Yeah, yes, so I made these. They're a lot thicker. They can kind of stand up and hold their shape. Versus the really flimsy ones that they come with. Which after you get like a bunch of them on there, they just all kind of flop down.
Right.
So I experimented with different gauges and finally settled on that.
Yeah, I was very impressed by those. If I ever get a thing that uses those beyond, like, I mostly just use them for breadboarding, and if I break them, then I already have like my soldering irons.
You should holler at Soma. You should holler at Soma now that they have a U.S. location and just be like, guys, this is
not till you're done with your current order, though.
Yeah, no.
You can definitely order those. I'm sure Bartok would hook you up. All right. I don't want to take up too much more time. We've talked about most of the things. Oh, I want to talk about light up patch cables really fast.
Oh, that was on the list, wasn't
it? There's a new set that's coming out that Andrew Wong promoted recently. I think it was his idea, and he's working with another company to make them, and they look cool. They're like a little more subtle than like the clear ones. So I'm very excited I signed up. But I also saw like across the board and all of the Discords that I'm in, like as they pop up, people are like, oh, but they suck for like pitch control or blah, blah, blah. They can't rely on them for control voltage or whatever. You're going to get voltage sag. And I'm like, yeah, but like I'm attenuating my LFO anyway. So it's fine.
Diode filtration is a thing. That's just keep telling yourself that.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, it is true, right? It's not
like, but it was so negative. I was like, these are awesome. I'm going to buy these. Like, but you're going to lose like some voltage. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. It's an LFO, man. Like, come on.
They're good enough for Richard Devine, right?
Like, yeah, I use it for my theremin, some LFOs, any control voltage. You can use it for clocks, like it's fine. Like if Richard Devine can buy up all of the current available ones, like I'm glad there's another manufacturer coming.
And then suddenly your sequencer doesn't work because the voltage is not enough for your
gauge. It's just like that much below.
Yeah. That's dumb.
No, it's cool. I mean, it's a great look. I'm not interested. It's enough lights already for me, for my taste. But like, it's cool. Like,
I think they're really handy for the ones that I leave connected are way too long. which bothers me. And they came with some Error Instrument stuff that I got. He just threw them in because he's a really nice person. But I used one on the theremin, so that when my hand gets close, you can see like the voltage change, and like that's a really visual thing that like tells people what I'm doing. And then I use one on the door stopper module, again for a similar reason. So like it's just like it's less. I don't need to know. Like I've got like buffered moles that have LEDs and stuff. I really need to know like the voltage of a thing, but it's just like a visual that goes along with emotion. I don't know. Anyway, on that note, when are you gonna make light up patch cables, Bartok? Never.
No, somebody else already makes them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm gonna wrap it because we're a little bit over time. Thanks.
Does someone make those? Does someone make those 90s light up in the dark kind of things as patch cables?
I do have like glow in the dark ones.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, I have some glow in the dark, and I can't show them.
Or just like UV reactive.
Well, and I have that too. So like my my neon yellow cable, this one here, it reacts extremely well to UV, but also like my rainbow cables look really cool in UV. Like,
yeah, like if you watch some of Bartok's videos, you'll see like just some of the colors like extremely bright. It's pretty cool looking.
But I do have like the glow in the dark. Those are it's because these are all fabric. It's cloth, so it works like other glow in the dark material where it has to be charged in light. So I will say that they do glow, but it's not really bright, and it doesn't last because it's kind of charges and then it goes out.
Right.
So
I like Friendman's suggestion of like 90s goofy things like cables with slime and glitter in them would be I would buy one. More like a hose, and you'd hope it never leaked.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm working on some barbed wire cable.
Yeah.
Also would use that.
The razor wire.
You know what? That would be perfect for Seat Lombard, right? Because they're just banana jack, so barbed wire would work fine.
Yeah.
You could have a tube and then fill it with the glow stick stuff. That would be neat. And then in the cable in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? Just as long
have
as
a tube. Have a tube you can fill with the glow stick stuff around the cable.
Getting into like ruining your modulars.
Of course, that could be one side
everything effect. Devolves to the case on the beach. Right.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, does anybody want to play us out? I can play us out. It's just the same thing we heard a second ago, which is a really weird janky thing I made last night.
I liked it.
Too much sugar.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Wait, we have another.
Thank you for having
we have another question, real quick. Egon asks, "Are there any cables that have live goldfish swimming in them?"
Yes.
Yeah.
You can. I'll release it April 1st next year.
You joke, but people would like seriously want to order that.
Your price, $1 million.
Switch audio, and I'll play us out. I guess.
Cheers.
Well, sorry, Bartok. Didn't mean to make it big. Just really awkward software. It's just terrible. Hold on, audio.